So a little while ago, I put out a video called Prayer is Silly, and it was basically my own personal thoughts on why I thought intercessory prayer, specifically being prayer that asks God or a God for a specific thing to happen, is relatively, silly and has dubious effects on what happens in the real world. So, after putting that video together, I wanted to take some time to do a little bit of research. I actually have a slice of paper in front of me this time, and just talk about a couple different things that I looked into. Way back in 2006, there was a project that went on called the STEP project, also known as the Study of Therapeutic Effects on Intercessory Prayer. So basically, this foundation had funded a whole bunch of different hospitals and people who were willing to pray for people who were undergoing a coronary artery bypass graft surgery. So what they did is 6 hospitals were randomly assigned to 3 groups. 604 received intercessory prayer, so people prayed for them, and they told that they may or may not be prayed for. So I guess this is a double-blind study. I don't really like that phrase because it's so misused lately. Then there was another group of 597 that did not receive prayer, and they were also told that, they may or may not. Basically, I guess from after looking at the study, they were just asked, we're probably going to have some people pray for you. And finally, there was a third group with 601 people, and they did receive prayer, and they were told that they were going to receive prayer specifically. Basically, for 2 weeks, the prayer was provided for the group that was told that they may or may not get prayer, and the group that was told specifically that they were going to get prayer. And the outcome was supposed to be that there would be no complications during the surgery. Nothing would go wrong. That's what these groups of people, were told to pray specifically for, that there wouldn't be any complications during any of the surgeries that they were praying for. And obviously they were also told that, of the complications, the biggest one that they were supposed to pray for is death. They didn't want death to happen. Ultimately, no death, no complications. That's what the prayers were. So the results were relatively interesting, not because of this first part, because the first group that did receive prayer but was told that they may or may not receive prayer had a 52% complication rate. And the group that didn't receive prayer had a 51% complication rate. So there was really nothing different in between the group that did and didn't. But that's really not the most interesting part of the study, because the third group that was specifically told that they were going to receive prayer, had a 59% complication rate. And there was really a lot of mortality in that group specifically. So what does this mean? Essentially, the prayers that were, admonished to these people really didn't have an effect. But what I think, and actually this is pretty interesting because I read Richard Dawkins' comment on the study as well, is that the people who were told specifically that they were going to be prayed for by anonymous prayer warriors or what have you for 14 days probably felt like they were, in real trouble, like they really needed these prayers by all these people. And it had probably some sort of, psychosomatic effect on when they underwent the surgery and probably caused complications. Now, is that true? Hard to say, but it can be really difficult for people who feel like they're in such a state of need that they need tons and tons of people to pray for them that they can get depressed. It can seem almost hopeless when the last resort is tons and tons of prayer. So these people who underwent surgery really did have some of these complications in this third group. And that was back in 2006, but the other thing that I looked into happened all the way back in 1872, and I found this really enlightening because there was this old British dandy by the name of Francis Galton, and he wrote pretty extensively about a lot of atheistic topics, and he was actually an amateur in eugenics, which is pretty interesting. But he wrote a book about the efficacy of prayer back in 1872. And it was basically, he and a bunch of his buddies were probably drunk and joking about this at one point in time, that members of the royal family should live longer because, God save the queen, all these things that are being said, all these prayers, very light, not specific ones, should have had some correlation with the longevity of those people in the royal family. And there really wasn't anything. And so because of that, he had a bunch of people pray for random tracts of land, farmland, to, grow better, this and that, and he really didn't have any statistics. And I'll link probably some of Galton's material in the description as well as a link to the STEP program, which I thought was probably more interesting and more scientific. But these sort of doubts go all the way back to 1872. And I find that just to be fascinating. It's perfectly fine to have doubts, especially because there is no correlation between prayer and what can positively happen with people who are the targets of that prayer. If anything, the STEP program kind of showed, a negative effect on those people who really were told that they were going to be prayed for. And so to end the video, kind of wrap it up, I want to share one of the more interesting quotes that I found in one of Galton's books. If prayerful habits had influence on temporal success, it is very probable that insurance offices of at least some descriptions would long ago have discovered and made allowance for it. I mean, could you imagine that? Could you imagine some guy going to Progressive or American Family and asking for a discount rate on his car insurance because he prays for it every day? It's just too much to pay. Can you cut it out? I pray for my car's safety every single day. Nothing's going to happen to it. Can you give me a discount? I mean, it's ridiculous. These sort of things they have their roots, and having these doubts in religion and prayer specifically, which is my number one target with this channel, I think, there's a solid ground in that. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to keep making videos. My next one is going to be on the difference between prayer and meditation, because I feel that, yes, there very much is a difference between that, especially introspective meditation that can turn into an outward sort of, progression in your own life. Prayer really doesn't have the same effect that planning and meditating on your own life can have. Meditation, I don't think, is a religious thing. I think it has to do with the secular way that you can grow as an individual. But like I said, I'll leave it at that. There will be another video soon to come. Thank you. And I hope my facts are correct. I'll link them in the description.